The snows fall and the snows melt. The cold comes and the heat returns. This is a really interesting time of year, especially where we live, where it's roll the dice weather. Some days it's really, really cold. The next day you need to be pulling your shorts back out because it's in the 70s, 80s. Winter is a time of change. It's a time of impermanence. We get to watch the leaves fall from the trees and the grass changes color. Sometimes goes completely brown during this time of year. I don't think we talk enough about impermanence because we like to think that things are forever, even when they're not. Let's take advantage of this winter time and discuss impermanence as we walk together down creation's path. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan Druid and Priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I am a Christopagan Druid and sous chef to the Downtown.
Today, we're going to be talking about impermanence. This isn't really a heavy topic. A lot of people treat this with a gravitas.
An unnecessary solemnity.
Yeah, it feels so weighty sometimes when it's actually the lightest topic that we could talk about, literally.
It's also an often overlooked topic. We live in a place where, especially at this time of year, there can literally be a 40-degree shift in weather. You could wake up in the morning and it'll be 30 degrees out.
Frost on the
ground. And by later in the afternoon, it'll be 70 degrees out, warm and shorts weather, ready to go. Life is impermanent, especially around here. So many of the locals don't see that. And it's like you live it sometimes daily. One of the bad jokes is if you don't like the weather around here, wait 5 minutes because it'll literally be sunny, then rainy. Sometimes it's raining and sunny out. That one took a little bit to get used to, even for myself. As somebody who loves to embrace impermanence, my brain was just broken because I'm like, it's so sunny out and it's raining.
I warned you before we moved here.
Oh, yeah. Because I knew of the song. I thought it was a fun song, but I've never seen this. I have seen it, and it can cause interesting mental discordance or a wonderful meditation opportunity.
Also, we have thunder snows where there will be flurries outside and thunder raging in the sky.
And even sometimes flashing in the clouds.
Yeah.
You can watch the clouds light up even with lightning. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to play in this snow.
So before we dig into this further, just a reminder, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on whatever app you're listening to us on. We do original Christopagan and Druid content 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And you don't want to miss a thing. We got a lot of stuff coming up. And just so you know, so you're pre-warned ahead of time, we've made the decision. We're actually doing the 12 days of Christmas. So from Christmas to Epiphany, you're going to get an episode every day to lead you through a daily reflection on each of the 12 days of Christmas as we're going through this year. And I'm really excited for that.
And if you're like, well, 12 days of Christmas, don't worry. We're going to have a little talk about that ahead of time beforehand to set up things so that everybody will be on the same page going into the holiday season.
And it's not just a song, even though I did want to name the fifth day 5 Golden Rings.
Yeah.
I really did, but we didn't. There's a lot to talk about.
That's right. I wanted to name the first day a partridge in a pear tree. But
no. We are both practitioners of creation spirituality and really think a lot of more people should be exposed to the ideas of creation spirituality. If you are not that long ago, I think it was last year, they recollected a bunch of Matthew Fox's writings and released a book, I believe it's called Matthew Fox's Essential Writings on Creation Spirituality. Very creatively named. I actually know the editor of the book, really nice guy. It's a wonderful collection of essays and articles, as well as other things that had not been in print for a long time, that'll really guide you through the idea of what is creation spirituality. At the core of it is the 4 paths. You hear us talk about this all the time. We have an episode on it if you want to go back and really dig into this. But the second of the 4 paths is the Via Negativa, the path of negation. It is the companion of the Via Positiva, the positive way. So the positive way and the negative way in creation spirituality, through their union, make the creative way. It's very important to understand this. This is why I'm starting here, because the negative way doesn't mean the dour, sad, sorrowful, horrible way. It's negative as in, it's the things we can't talk about that well because there aren't really words for it. Whereas the positive way is the things that we can talk about and have awe and wonder and hospitality for. The negative way is harder to talk about. And impermanence is found everywhere in the four paths, but has its home in the Via Negativa. Impermanence is hard to talk about because it's just that. It's the bubbles rising up in a soda, that wonderful effervescence that we love that kind of tickles your tongue when you're having a soda. It's impermanent because if you leave that soda out too long, the soda goes flat. The soda is still there, but something is missing. And I think that's where people get it wrong when they start thinking about impermanence.
For me, it's like a nice vine-ripe tomato. It's got all of these wonderful, delicious, complex flavors. And it will, in due time, lose some of its flavors and change, and eventually become inedible.
That is the key word, and change. Impermanence is about change. And most of the conversations I see about impermanence focus on death.
Yeah, the breaking down, the entropy of it.
The entropy of the thing. Yes, death is kind of the penultimate impermanence that we face. That I, as this being, have a certain amount of days in this world, and then will no longer be this integrated fleshly body. And that's true of everybody. And I get that that's one that kind of bothers people and really makes people think a lot. Contemplating mortality and everything is a thing.
It is associated with an end.
Yeah.
That's why some people have so many troubles with it. It's an end, but it's not an end.
And impermanence, when understood as an end, is a really incomplete understanding of impermanence. So one of my favorite early lessons on impermanence is one of my teachers sat me down with a collection of Lego on one side of the table, and he had built this really pretty like castle tower out of the same basic set of Lego. So they were basically the same colors in both things, and kind of just waved his hand back and forth between the two. This is a stack of Lego. This is a castle tower. Now the Lego are in the castle tower and the castle tower are in the Lego, but they are not the same thing. The parts can be made into the whole and the whole can be reduced back to its parts, and that this is impermanence. And that kind of blew my mind when I was younger, because impermanence to me always was this idea of things end. And the point that he was trying to get to was understanding the emptiness that impermanence is pointing to, the no separate self that impermanence is pointing to, that we really misunderstand. To go back to your tomato, the tomato has an impermanent cycle to it. It starts as a flower, turns into a bud, grows into a fruit, and then if you don't eat that fruit in time, will turn into a wonderful land for mold to grow on. Or if we eat it, becomes us. That tomato in all of its parts are now within us. And when you start understanding that this is one of the basic powers of the universe, this is one of the ways the universe works and functions, that everything has an impermanence, but that does not necessarily mean an ending, because the universe is the great recycler. And whether that's breaking things down to their elemental or molecular components for reuse, or I don't know if you've seen, I think they're really pretty to see, the like pyramids that we're finding out in South America and Central America, that the earth has decided, ooh, new mountain, and has treated them like it would any hill or mountain, and trees and grasses and flowers and vines have just grown all over them. Well, is it a hill or a pyramid? To the earth, it was a hill. To us, it's a pyramid, and we need to scrape off all of that not pyramid to make it back into a pyramid. But for a period there, it's both.
What'll really blow your mind is at least the thought that a lot of the pyramids were inspired by hills. So mythically speaking, they built a hill and the earth accepted it as that very thing. It just went, we accept your mythical interpretation, and congratulations, it is now hill.
Once you start moving away from this either or mentality of something either is this or that, and can start entering this both and, I feel that both and is the home of impermanence. That's not just in our ability to oscillate back and forth, but in our ability to see through multiple lenses. I was watching a Tail Foundry video the other day, and I'm probably going to do something about this on one of my other platforms, but I think it's germane to what we're talking about here. They were talking about the difference in how fantasy works and how people talk about their suspension of disbelief, and how Tolkien, when he was writing about fantasy, talked about accepting a secondary belief. Like, it's not one that you believe with your whole heart, like elves have have magic and live in Middle Earth as a fact, but that you allow yourself to believe. You're not suspending your disbelief that there's a place called Middle Earth and there are elves living there, but you allow this secondary belief that you may know in your heart, there is no Arda, there is no Middle Earth, but you allow yourself to believe it to take part in the story. And I love that positive way of thinking about this, because that is both anding.
Yeah.
And to me, it was such a forward way of thinking that I didn't expect to see in Tolkien's writing, because I am tired of either or thinking. Very few cases in life are there either or decisions to make. And they do happen. It's not something that never happens. And this, again, is why both and is important, because I can say both and is the best way to think of things. And sometimes the and is either or. Yes, racism, bad, unequivocally bad. You can be a racist or not be a racist. You can't be both a racist and a not racist at the same time. Like, you can't. And the same for sexism, queerphobia, and the rest. Understanding this idea of allowing ourselves to have these secondary beliefs helps us to understand how both and works. When I talk about the spirit of my house or the spirit of my laptop, I am an animist, and I believe that life infuses all matter. I really do, primary believe that, right? But when I'm talking about my laptop, I do believe that there is life in the components, like, because life is in all material existence. Like, I do not believe in a dead universe, but the personality that I generate for this laptop, because of some of its quirks and eccentricities, is really, and this is important for us to start realizing, a secondary belief. It's me and my experience with it creating a story that I'm not talking directly to the spirit of the laptop. I could probably do some ritual and meditation work and maybe do that. But when I'm talking about that relationship, right? Now, here's why I went down this tangent. So many of us in our spiritual practice assign a permanence to those ideas. My experience of Bridget is the same as my experience of my laptop. I do believe that there is a Bridget. I have a primary belief. Bridget is a real spiritual being, a real spiritual entity that is really working in the world. I do believe that I have communed with her. I do believe that I contracted to work for her. Primary beliefs. 100% believe that. But this is the power of impermanence. I also believe that whatever I think I have heard from her is not necessarily unverified personal gnosis, but I can never allow myself the certainty of believing that I heard 100% accurately, or that it wasn't wish fulfillment on my part. I can still act out of a secondary belief that I believe that I heard her accurately, and that I'm doing what I believe she wants me to do and what I have talked with her about doing. But it is a secondary belief, because I won't know until I die. I just won't. Some people don't like that uncertainty because they are unwilling to accept the basic impermanence of life. I might be wrong. If you are in any of your practices, spiritual, political, what have you, unwilling to accept the real possibility that you are wrong. We are all wrong. I really want to stress that. In 40 years, whatever the kids believe will be so different, because that's how progress works. They're going to take the ideas that we came up with and build on them and make something new that will probably feel foreign to us. I'm heading towards 50 and I'm feeling this already, and I'm trying to stay up. I'm trying to keep plugged in and understanding where the world's going. But I can already feel that dissonance inside myself of, oh, I never really thought about it that way. Oh, that's a difficult way to think about that. It's not that the kids are wrong and that I'm right. It's not that I'm right or I'm wrong. Everything is impermanent and changes from second to second, from day to day, from hour to hour, from year to year, from generation to generation. if we could just adopt this understanding of our primary and secondary beliefs. Primary beliefs, yeah, 100% all in, bought in on it. These are my secondary beliefs. This is my understanding that I gleaned from those beliefs. We would all be better off. I feel this way about medicine, for example. I have what I feel like I believe medicine, real science. You should listen to doctors. You should listen to the people who are actually studying these things and figuring out how stuff works, right? All of my medical beliefs are secondary. I am not a scientist that studies these things. I am not a doctor. I am not a pharmacist. I only have the ideas that I have gleaned from that field. And that is a level of impermanence that I don't feel that people are comfortable with because we want to know. We feel like not knowing is the same as being wrong. And that's that both and thinking, being turned against itself, right? Because you're either knowledgeable or ignorant, right? No, you can be both. I feel like I am knowledgeable about a lot of subjects. I know a lot about ancient Egypt, the ancient Levant, life in Ireland in the Middle Ages and what have you, right? Am I right about a lot of things? Probably. Am I wrong about a lot of things? Probably. Are we all wrong about certain things? Probably, because somebody's going to put a spade in the earth and find a thing that's going to make us all go, huh, well, that's data we didn't have before. I grew up loving dinosaurs and learned everything I could about dinosaurs. The dinosaurs I grew up with as a kid had no feathers. And then they started saying, well, they are kind of bird-like. Maybe they're related to birds. And then we found fossils that you could see the imprints of the feathers in the material. Oh, yeah, definitely. They had feathers. I was right when I was a kid to believe in my featherless dinosaurs because we did not know that dinosaurs had feathers. I am right now to believe in feathered dinosaurs because we have found evidence of feathered dinosaurs. This is the heart of embracing impermanence, being willing to accept change. And notice the way I'm wording this. This is very important because this is how we get around these traps in our own brain. I'm willing to accept change. We learned more, and raptors had feathers. Also, for all the people who are going to point at Jurassic Park, that was a Deinonychus and not a raptor. They just called it a raptor. Raptors were tiny. They were the size of turkeys. That was a Deinonychus that they used in there, but they decided not to change the word because raptor is a sexier word for a movie than a Deinonychus. So it's all wrong all the way down. But, right, wrong is a judgment tone. Wrong is a judgment tone. When you say, this is wrong, you are wrong, I am wrong, you have made a judgment. And we have a really hard time in our culture separating judgment from something's worth or value. So when I say I'm wrong, or they're wrong, or this is wrong, most people who have grown up in this culture hear that as, oh, they were bad or ignorant. And ignorance is not a sin.
Ignorance is an opportunity to learn more.
Ignorance is the natural condition that we're all born in. We're all born ignorant of the world and have to be taught, fire bad, don't put your hand, don't touch the hot thing, right? And we're all born ignorant. It's not a judgment to say that you are ignorant about something.
The story in Genesis, Adam and Eve in the garden, they haven't partaken from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God didn't go, you're bad, you're wrong for being ignorant. They were ignorant. They had not the knowledge of good and evil. They were in a happy little state.
Because they had no judgment.
They had no judgment. And God says, okay, you probably don't want this thing. You can have it in your life. You really shouldn't.
I am very much of the belief that the whole point of that story is once you realize the harshness of the world, it's all you can see. That it is a story about ignorance is bliss. They were living in pure ignorance. They didn't understand that the lion eats the lamb. They didn't understand, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't have judgment. They didn't have the categories of good and evil.
Because you can see a lion eating a lamb and going, wow, that's a thing that happened.
That's nature.
Lion eats. Yeah. It's only when you have judgment that it becomes a bad thing. And of course, the fear that you may be the lamb next time and not the actual lamb being eaten in your place. Because it's oftentimes it is the fear is the actual root that then feeds the judgment that goes into it that then makes it bad.
This is where impermanence is our best friend. Once you understand that ignorance is a state, it's not a judgment. You have various states that you can be in. You can be ignorant, you can be somewhat learned, you can be a scholar, right? There's a spectrum, Everything's a spectrum, and once we start understanding that, we will be a better species. These aren't switches. That's why either or, because again, this is why I kept saying both and when I was talking about ignorance. I am both learned when it comes to dinosaurs and extremely ignorant. I don't read the papers. I listen to a lot of podcasts that read the papers and tell me what the current science is, right? But I'm not reading the papers. I'm not out in the field digging up bones. I'm not immersed in it. It's just something that I'm interested in. I am both learned and ignorant. I'm on the spectrum. And I'm sure there are certain dinosaurs that I know more about than others, right? Same with topics of space. Same with topics about basic life and living.
The knowledge with this also helps in its inverse as well. So many people give in to pride where they think they know a thing. This is one of the main tools for getting conned.
Yeah.
Because the minute you have that pride, you think you know the thing, you can be duped and tricked so much
So
easier
easily.
because you think you know. And you can also see it, especially in the culture we live in and probably in many other cultures, where somebody thinks they know a thing and they heard a false thing they believed was fact ignorantly, but because they are right and they believe they're right, now that is the gospel truth for that person. And this being able to recognize it first, be able to live in this mental state of both, and you can accept that, okay, I heard this piece of information. I don't have any, I have that confirmation bias to go, okay, well, it sounds right. And you roll with it because there's nothing wrong with doing that. You may be too busy to take the time to look into it. But the next time you have something that contradicts it, you need to not have the pride to go, this is gospel truth, therefore what contradicts it is wrong, and judge immediately. You should hold both and go, okay, there's a contradiction. Obviously something is not right here.
Honestly, and I keep going to dinosaurs because it's a hard science, right? Paleontology is a hard science, and I feel like it's a good analogy for this because people are like, wait, you're talking about beliefs with science. And yes, because I'm not involved, right? I have a primary belief. Dinosaurs existed. They existed hundreds of millions of years ago. They were probably wiped out by a meteor, ... right? All of my other beliefs they're fan fiction. They're secondary beliefs in my head of how I think I understand these things. And that's how my faith works. I believe that there is a God, that God exists in all things, that everything is animate, alive, that we do not live in a dead universe. Those are my primary beliefs. And the problem with them is they're very unscientific because, and I want to say this for everyone, including my atheist and agnostic friends, we will never be able to prove whether we live in a living or dead universe because we would have to have both a living and a dead universe to do testing on. To know. Because we can't come up with criteria, because while you're saying that natural laws are working on a thing, my interpretation of that is a rock knows what it is. It doesn't know as in having its own brain or anything, but the rock knows where it will cleave if you hit it. Yeah. And that's two interpretations of the same set of facts. And the problem is, it doesn't matter. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other way. It just depends on how that affects our lives. And so many of our beliefs fit into this thing where they're actually these secondary beliefs. They're fan fiction about reality. Some aren't. Everyone is entitled to universal human rights. That's a primary belief. No asterisks on that. No asterisks at all. You do the most horrible, heinous things, you still deserve due process and fair treatment under law. You just do. Everyone does, right? Primary belief. Now, my beliefs on housing policy and how the economy should work, those are all secondary beliefs. Those are all fan fiction that we have extrapolated from reality. And I think if we can start getting ourselves and others to understand that level of impermanence, because secondary beliefs can change. Yep. Primary beliefs are really hard to change, because if somebody tried to prove to me that dinosaurs aren't real, I mean, I've been to the Smithsonian's. I've been to a lot of natural history museums. I've seen the bones. I've been out at digs where they're literally pulling them out of the earth because I kind of wanted to be a paleontologist for a while. Yeah. No, there are bones in the ground.
So I would like to put forward 2 practices at the end here to help everybody out. The first one, especially if you're getting into impermanence, if you're wanting to really have more of a practice that's a deep dive into the experience of it, for me, this is the one that really unlocked impermanence. So get a jar. It could be any old jar. Heck, it could be the empty pickle jar, or whatever jar you had a condiment in. Clean it out really good. You're going to get some boiling water and sugar. You're going to want to have basically a one ratio of 1 water to like 2 parts sugar to 3 parts sugar. You want a lot of sugar, more sugar than water, but it doesn't have to be a lot of liquid. You only want enough to fill the jar maybe halfway. And you're going to put this on the stove. You're going to stir it a lot, heat it up. You want that to completely melt and to get to almost boiling, like a gentle simmer. Cool some, and then put that liquid into the jar. You're going to put some holes in the lid and 1 hole in the middle that you can hang a string down, maybe tie a screw or a nail to it, and hang that down so that it touches the liquid, the surface of the liquid. And then close the jar and let it sit. And you're going to watch this. This is liquid in a jar that has a screw and a string. And over time, a crystalline structure will form. If you want to be really fancy, you can put a little food coloring in the water.
It's great to do with kids.
Great to do with kids, but because this was an experiment I did as a child, it was basically making crystalline structures.
If you buy yourself popsicle sticks or anything like that,
You can actually make
actually edible rock candy with it.
But for myself, I took the experiment one step further, and I kind of accidentally, intuitively ended up coming up with a practice on impermanence out of this experiment. Because when it'll take a week, couple weeks, maybe a month, watch the crystalline structures form. And as this is forming, you're meditating on how this liquid is becoming this solid, this crystalline structure. It's really pretty to watch. When you're done, or when you're getting towards the end of that period, when it's formed enough crystalline structure, you're like, okay, this is now a crystalline structure. You're going to take a bit of water and you're going to heat it up. You're going to get it to a simmer and then let it cool down a little bit. You want it cool enough that you're not going to break the glass, but you want it hot enough, as hot as you can get it.
Unless you have a tempered glass jar, which a lot of our witchy folks do.
Yeah,
A collection of tempered glass jars.
You can basically,
if you're not sure if it's a tempered glass jar, let it cool down.
So then you're going to, whatever that 1/3 water part or 1 part water ratio was, you're going to have that as boiling water. You're going to put it back in the jar, and you're going to kind of shake the jar around. Put the lid back on it, shake it around, and you'll watch the crystalline structure disappear. And that is the impermanence. It is both a crystalline structure and liquid in a jar with a string and a screw.
And it will eventually turn back into a crystal, but it will be a different shape.
It'll be a completely different crystal, but it'll be crystal again. But you can basically do this over and over again as much as you need it as you're meditating. This is a longer form practice, but a wonderful practice on impermanence, because it is the end of the crystal. That crystal is gone. It is dead, so to speak. But it is also not gone, because it's just changed. And then it'll change over and over and over again. The liquid will die and become a crystal. The crystal will die and become a liquid. And that is the impermanence of it.
When I was going to temple, cleaning with the monks, they would have us do meditations on impermanence by, those little bitty teacups? I mean, the little teacups. Like, a lot of Chinese restaurants still use them. Those itty bitty little teacups only hold maybe 4 ounces of liquid in them. They don't hold a lot, but they would make, almost scalding hot tea. And they would pour a little bit in everybody's cup, and you'd try to take a sip, but you'd feel the heat as it approached through your lips, and it was like, wait. And you'd feel it as it got colder and colder and colder. And use that as a meditation on that, because that is impermanence. You're experiencing the heat dissipate, because when you can finally take a sip, that warmth goes all throughout your body. By the time you get to the last sip, it's almost cold, because if you got a nice stoneware or some other kind of cup that really will allow that heat transfer, it'll get really cold by the end. And you feel that change and that gradation. And that's the meditation I was taught to help to understand this.
The second quicker meditation on impermanence, or practice on impermanence, I was going to ask everyone to do, and this one is more of just periodically, is when you're looking at the weather, you take a minute to acknowledge the weather and to acknowledge its change. And every time you notice the weather, you bring up that memory of what the weather was before. And it just becomes one of those nice daily, weekly, periodic reminders that I do to remind myself about impermanence. Whenever I take notice of the weather, I'm like, oh, it's raining. And I go, but it was sunny. And if I want to think deeper on it, I remember, oh yes, the rain evaporated, went back into the clouds, and all the constant change and everything that happens to make the weather what it is, all of its shifting states. And it's just that it's one of the reasons why I observe the weather so much, is because it's one of my constant exercises on the impermanence.
My most constant, accidental, but real meditation on impermanence, because of my link to Irish spirituality, I have a really pretty bowl that's shaped like a leaf that I have up on the altar. And I will periodically, I've been thinking lately I might want to go to a more daily schedule with this. That's a whole other thing about routines. We'll fill it with holy water, which is a mixture of salt and water. And I have to keep refilling it because it's evaporating. Now, the whole point of this is a gateway on the altar, because the water is a gateway between here and the other world. That's one of the reasons I do this, but it has to constantly be refilled and has to be carefully cleaned, because I'm adding salt water. And as the water is evaporating, salt crystals are growing in the vessel. And so I am witnessing this change. And I have gone back and forth over whether or not how often I should be washing out the salt crystals and how often I should be redissolving them into the new water. That's a whole practice question again for a different episode, but it's actually a practice that I do for a completely non-impermanence related practice. But because of the impermanent nature of water, that it is constantly evaporating as it's sitting on the altar, I always have to add more. It's a daily, weekly, monthly, depending on the cycle that I'm on with it, reminder of that I need to keep topping it up.
How do you practice your reminders on impermanence?
Yeah, I'd love to know. And was this the episode that you thought you were going to get when you saw us talking about impermanence? I bet it wasn't. And that's something to interrogate. Has this affected the way you think about impermanence? I would love to know that too, because I think impermanence is such a powerful idea, and it's one that we neglect to our disadvantage. Let me know in the comments. If you're listening to us on either Spotify or YouTube, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say that you can leave a comment, they won't let us know, so we won't know, but you can leave a comment there, because engagement is magic. And then head over to creationspast.com, click on chat, and you can leave a comment there, and we will get a notification and be able to respond. I would love to know, how do you incorporate impermanence into your practice? Because everyone should, in some way, shape, or form, even if it's an unconscious byproduct that you noticed, like the last practice that I talked about. While you're over at Creations Past, if you have a few dollars you can pass our way, you can think about joining a membership. That really helps us out, keeps the lights on, food on our table, and a roof over our heads. You can also support us by going to Ko-fi or Patreon. I am C. Dorset on both. Ko-fi is the better option for two reasons. You can do a one-time donation, and also they don't keep as much. So more of your support goes directly to us, and I love them for that. Thank you to everybody who does that. Y'all are amazing, amazing people. And if you don't have any money, trust me, I know what that feels like. I'm there with you right now. But if anything that we've said in this episode or any of our other episodes has really helped you out, think about sharing that to somebody else. That really helps us out more than you know. It is really hard to get the word out about a podcast, and y'all have been miraculous in helping us keep the podcast growing. And thank you. Y'all are amazing. So as we are heading out into the brave world, I like calling on angels, and I'm going to do something that most of you are not going to expect. We're going to call on what I feel like is the angel of impermanence. Oh, sweet Azrael, angel of death and change. Help us to accept the changes that are happening in our lives and help to guide us to the better worlds that we seek in the future. Amen.
Amen.